All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about regulating AI, which, is a massive topic. But we're going to look at it from a totally different angle. We're going to get into the deep, invisible values that explain why you and I might have completely opposite ideas about who should be in control of AI. So let's get into it.
The really interesting thing is that this call for regulation isn't just coming from the outside. It's coming from inside the house, from the heart of Silicon Valley itself. I mean, when a guy like Elon Musk, a person who has spent his entire career pushing the absolute limits of innovation, says, hey, we need to pump the brakes and let the government take the wheel, that makes you stop and ask a pretty big question. Why?
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with that call for control. Then we're going to map out the different mindsets behind these opinions, zoom in on one really powerful perspective, and then, this is the cool part, see how all this can actually predict how people will react. Okay, part one, the call for control. This is where we look at this kind of surprising request for more rules coming from the very people you'd expect to be against them. For a while now, Musk has been saying that AI isn't just any other technology. It's a potential threat to civilization itself. Now, the paradox here is just fascinating. On one hand, you've got this innovator, this regulatory maverick who loves to break the rules. And on the other, he's asking for a brand new government agency to police his own industry. That just tells you how heavy he thinks these risks really are. So Musk's position is a great place to start. But what's even more fascinating is that support for regulating AI isn't just random. The data shows it follows these really clear, predictable patterns that are tied directly to our deepest core value systems. And to understand these patterns, we're going to use a framework called spiral dynamics. The easiest way to think about it is like a map of different worldviews. Each color, or as the model calls it, a vMEME, is a whole system of values with its own priorities, its own fears. It's basically a way to get to the why behind what people actually believe. So, this brings us to the big question, right? Can we actually predict where someone stands on AI regulation just by understanding their core values? Is there a real, measurable link there? And the answer is a huge, resounding yes. I mean, just look at this data. It's so clear. The blue worldview, which is all about order, rules, and safety, has a strong positive link to wanting state control. That makes total sense. But then you look at red, which is focused on power and being your own boss. It strongly disagrees with being told what to do. And get this, orange, the mindset of achievement and innovation, sees AI as a danger, but it has a negative correlation with wanting the government to step in. The divide is it's stark, and it's all being driven by these invisible worldviews. Okay, now let's zoom in on one of these and really see how this works. In part 3, we're going to look at the green perspective, a worldview where support for oversight is really consistent and really strong. This number right here, plus 0.0748, this is the key. It's from a global poll, almost 900 people from 77 different countries, and it shows a solid, statistically reliable connection. The stronger someone's green values are, things like community, fairness, working together, the more likely they are to say, yes, the state should control AI. And here's why that connection is so powerful. For someone with a green worldview, regulation isn't a bad word. It's not about red tape or slowing things down. They see it completely differently, as collective stewardship. It's a protective measure, a way to make sure this incredibly powerful new tool helps everyone, especially the people who could easily get hurt by it. This chart really gets to the core psychology of it. For this value system, the biggest fear, the real pain, isn't that we'll innovate too slowly. No, the pain is being told that protecting people gets in the way of progress. The reward, the gain, is that feeling of security, of knowing that there are safeguards in place to make sure technology serves all of us. And this isn't just some abstract theory. You see this exact mindset in action all over the place. You see it with the ethicist Timnit Gebru and her fight against bias algorithms. You see it in the EU's Big AI Act, which is all about protecting citizens. And you hear it when the author Kate Crawford warns that without public oversight, AI will just encode inequality. It's a consistent worldview that translates directly into real-world action.
So we've seen how a deep value system can shape an opinion on AI, but the real power here isn't just understanding why people think what they do. It's about using that knowledge to predict what happens next. In our last section, we'll see how this gives us an amazing ability to forecast how people are going to react.
See, these correlations, they're not just fun facts, they're data points.
You can actually plug them into predictive models to simulate how different groups of people will respond to something you do. It allows leaders to basically test drive the psychological fallout of a decision before they ever make it. You're moving from just guessing to having a real, data-driven strategy.
Okay, let's make this super practical. Imagine you're CEO. Business is slow. To avoid layoffs, you have to ask every single person on your team to take some unpaid leave. It's one single action. What happens?
While the model predicts two completely different realities. For the team that's driven by orange values, all about achievement, efficiency, and winning, this is a total disaster. They see it as a sign of failure, a roadblock. The correlation is strongly negative. But for the team with strong green values, they see it as a noble act, a sacrifice we all make together to save our colleagues' jobs. The correlation is strongly positive. It's the exact same action with two completely opposite outcomes.
And that, right there, is the bottom line. If you don't understand the underlying value systems of your audience, your team, your country, you're basically just rolling the dice. It's like you're broadcasting a message without having any idea if anyone out there is even tuned to your frequency.
But it doesn't have to be guesswork. This knowledge can be put into a clear 4-step process. 1. You survey the group to measure those invisible things like fear and trust. 2. You use that data to map their psychological profile. 3. You run simulations to see how they'd likely react to different actions. And 4. You act. You execute the plan that the data says has the best chance of actually working.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty mind-bending thought to chew on. For pretty much all of human history, we've thought of things like empathy and leadership as soft skills, in art. But what happens if we can now actually calculate the deep motivations of people? If empathy becomes just another computable variable in an equation, what does it really mean to be a leader?